Hey guys, it is Cal with the Lighting Doctor here. We're going to start our live stream a little bit earlier today. So usually in these live streams, we're going to try and do them every single Wednesday. What I usually like to do is answer a bunch of questions and stuff from the week, and then maybe go over some recent consultations where we kind of put some designs together for some people. But today, because there's a lot of questions I want to tackle, so I probably won't be doing a consult. I'll just, I'm going to go through all these different kind of questions and stuff. And it's a lot of the same stuff that we've covered in some of the other live streams, just with some slight variations, but basically, how to wire the lights. There's always questions on that. Those are most watched videos on YouTube. If you just search Lighting Doctor, how to wire lighting, you'll see all kinds of videos, but I still get questions all the time. So I just want to touch on a couple quick things with that, as well as like voltage drop and lengths of run, how to choose the right size transformer. I'll show you guys kind of some diagrams and some special tools that I use for that. I also wanted to touch on, sorry, I just made some notes here. What were the other things? Voltage drop. Oh yeah, and then I was going to talk a little bit about the different types of lights. A lot of you guys already know the different types of fixtures and stuff, but there seems to be some confusion sometimes between the wash light and the uplight and that kind of stuff, because we use the same fixture for all of those. But I'll kind of go through the little subtleties of that. And then I wanted to show you guys, I'm going to do this first because I think this is like the coolest tool. Is our battery packs. Let me see if I can just share my screen here. Let's go with, yeah, okay. Yeah, so a lot of you already know about this, but one of the things that we have that's super, super handy, and I'll show you what it actually looks like in a our kind of battery, our battery testers. So where is it here? So you can basically get any one of our lights if you're not sure. And then these little battery tester kits are really, really handy. I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. I'm not sure if I cut out there or if you guys saw anything. You know what, let me do this. Sorry guys, we will figure this out. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so these little battery testers. So what it is, it's just this battery pack. It just takes 8 AA batteries. And then what you can do is, if you have a fixture and you want to go test it out, all you got to do is, you might not be able to see this. So it's got 2 little alligator clips on it. You just hook it to the exposed wires from your lighting fixture. And then what it does, it actually turns your light on, so you can actually go test this at night. So this is a super good tool. I still use it, like if there's certain areas and I'm going to do a project and I'm like, I don't know, should I put a light here or not? I'll have a half a dozen of these and I'll go kind of place them around and see how it looks, especially for like different viewing angles and stuff. Because you can put a light here, you can put a light there, and you can kind of see how that looks in the background. So it's a super, super cool to do that. But also, and this is going to lead to my last point, where the difference between like a wash light and an uplight. This is where you can go test it before you go buy 20, 30 lights. It's a really, really cool tool to do that. It just takes some AA batteries. Like I said, you just hook up these alligator clips, and then when you're done, you take it off, and yeah, and you're good to go. So it's a pretty cool way to go and test out some lights if you're not real familiar with design and that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up, because I will talk about these different lights and the different versions of that in a second. So yeah, so first thing I wanted to kind of get into today, guys, is I really wanted to talk about, a little bit about the wiring connectors. Again, I'm not going to talk about the different connectors, but more how to wire the lights. And I'm going to kind of go to a wiring diagram that I have. Okay, let's go back to, I want to share a different screen here. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so what this is, because one of the questions I always get asked is, should I use like a hub method and have, one hub and all my different lights running from there? I really don't like doing that. It's okay if it's all in a really condensed area, but you really shouldn't have 5 or 6 lights in a really close area anyway. You probably want to do a better job on the design so you can spread those out across the whole yard a little bit better. And then what I find when you have that hub method, what you have is like you'll have a hub here, and then you've got, you know, wires going out to the lights here, wires here, wires here, wires here, wires here. And there's a lot more likelihood that those wires tend to get chopped, as well as sometimes if you ever have an issue and you have to go identify where that problem is, it's tougher to find which connection is connected to which light. So I'm not a big fan of those hub methods. The easiest way to do landscape lighting is just to go from fixture to fixture to fixture. And if you guys ever notice, like a lot of our connectors, they only have 3 ports on them. And a recent question I got is, well, what if I need to have, you know, 4 wires going into a light fixture? Well, you really shouldn't. The only time you would need that is, say you were doing a connection and you had a fixture here, and then you had another one and you wanted to jam everything into one connection, which I usually don't recommend anyway. What you're better off doing, if that's the case, even if you have to have, you know, 2 connections close to each other, but just have one of these pairs of connections for each light. So if you so there's really no reason to have 4 wires. Really what you're going to do then is you're just going to, you know, make this connection, and then you'll have another one right here, and you're going to do the same thing. But what it looks like when you're wiring now is that you've always got your 12-2 wire, right? And it's heading out from your transformer, and then you have your light fixture. Well, you're going to have that 12-2 wire has two wires in it, hence 12 gauge 2 wire. It's not rocket science, right? So you're going to have 2 connections at every light because you have 2 of those wires, right? So that 12-2 is going to go into that connection, and then it's going to go out towards the next connection. And then that other one is going to go into that connection and then out towards that next connection. And then you've got the 2 wires on the light fixture. One is going to go into one connection and one is going to go into the other connection. So therefore, you're only ever going to have 3 wires in each connection. Again, the only reason you would have 4 wires is if you tried to add another fixture, and then you've got these wires coming in twice. But again, you don't need to do that. So there's no real reason to do that. That's why you don't need a hub or anything. If for whatever reason you absolutely had to do that, you can do that using these larger DBRY connectors, which I talked about in our last stream. The reason is because they're a lot bigger, and especially with the fixture wires, because they're smaller, you can jam 4 wires in there if you had to. I'm not gonna lie, I've done it before because for some reason maybe I didn't have enough wire, the fixtures were really close, or I was lazy because it was raining out, and I've done that before. It works fine, same idea. You've got your 12-2 going in, your 12-2 going in and your 12-2 going out, and then you've got your 2 fixture wires, and if you so be it, you have another one, well then you have another 2 fixture wires, and you can put those in each one. So if you go to our website and you go to the how-to videos page, there's a video that talks about how to wire landscape lighting. It walks you through all this. I just wanted to kind of quickly go over that and say the best way is just daisy chain. And basically that means just go in sequence, just go from fixture to fixture and fixture. But there will be some scenarios where it might not make a lot of sense. So here's an example where I've got a fixture here, I've got a fixture here, and I've got a fixture here. I mean, I could run that wire all the way back around to this fixture off this last one, or you can always tee into a line. And we used to use, these DBRY connectors, which you can still use, but that's when we used a lot more of these BVS2 connectors, which again, you can still use. They're good connectors. Go check out the last live stream. I talked about all these kind of different connectors. And again, it's in that how to wire video. But with some of the new kind of nano junction ones that we have, they have the 3 ports still, but they're all the same size and they can handle 12-2 wire. So you don't necessarily need these. But the gist of it is you've got your fixtures connected, you run to your, you're running to your next light. And then here you want to make a T into the line so you can run that 12-2 wire over here. Well, it's going to be the exact same concept. You can use the exact same connectors, those nano junction connectors that have the larger ports. And again, you're going to have your 12-2 going in and your 12-2 going out. And then you're going to have one more 12-2 wire that's going to go to that next fixture. So again, you still only have 3 connections in pretty much every connection you're using, as long as you're just kind of using that daisy chain method and you're not kind of using a big hub somewhere, which I would recommend. I did want to touch just on that last fixture because I get this all the time. It's like, well, how do I dead end the wire? How do I end it when I'm done? Well, you don't really ever need to end it. If for whatever reason you thought you were going to expand and you wanted to end it somewhere so that you could just bury it and later you can just tap in, well, then you can always just throw some connectors on the end of that line and just keep it in there. But if it's your last light, you don't need to end the wire after that, because the only difference with your last fixture as opposed to these is, again, here, I'll just use a different example here, but you've got your 12-2 wire that goes in and your 12-2 wire that goes out. And then you've got that twice, right? Because you have two 12-2 wires and then you have your fixture wires. But if it's on the last fixture, you don't have 3 wires going in, you only have 2, right? Because you're going to have your 12-2 that goes into the connector, but it doesn't have to go anywhere else after that, right? So that's where it ends. So I get that question all the time. How do I end my line? Well, that's how. It just ends in that last connection, and then you have your wire from your fixture, and that's it. So on your last fixture, you're only going to have 2 wires in there. So again, if you go to the if you go to our website and just go check I'll just show you where it is, but on the do-it-yourself videos, this is the video that you want, Lighting Doctor, how to wire, and it'll bring it up. Maybe freezing here, but yeah, it's a little slow. It's pretty awful weather today, so I don't know what the internet's like. It's not good on the best of days, but here's the video you want to watch. This goes through everything that I just talked about, but in a lot more depth with actually real life examples and stuff. So I just wanted to talk about that, and that was kind of all I wanted to touch on wiring. With the exception is I wanted to talk a little bit about voltage drop again. Now I did talk about this in my last live too, but I wanted to kind of share again just another, where is that guy? There we go. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys this. So this is a voltage drop chart, because again, I always get the questions, well, how big a transformer do I need? How far or how long a runs can my wire be? Well, this will show you guys that. And so basically what this is a 12-2 voltage chart. So what this does is it tells you basically how many lights you can have on a length of cable. So here's the wattage of lights that we have on the left side here, and this is our length of cable. And this is assuming we're using 12-2 cable. Those connectors that I just talked about, they'll hold 12 gauge wire or smaller. It is very rare that you're going to need to use 10 gauge wire or larger if you're using LED lights. If it's a really, really big project and you have a driveway that's 500 feet out, then yes, you might have to use something larger. Then you'll use those larger DBRY connectors. You run the 10-2 basically till you get to that first light. And then after that, everything else should be able to be 12 gauge. I don't even talk about 16 or 14 or 18 gauge, because there's really no reason you're not saving that much money going down to a smaller gauge like that. The only time you might have to use that is if you need to sneak some small wire in between, some fence or cracks in the driveway or something like that. But in that case, you're probably not running it 300 feet. So it doesn't matter. There is charts like that for those, but I don't go over them because you're going to use 12 gauge wire 99.9% of the time. But basically what this is telling us, don't worry too much about the red and the white. This was a lot more relevant again when you had halogen fixtures. You had to be a lot more cautious on voltage drop and stuff, because those fixtures only run at a certain volt. Those lights only run at a certain volt. With LED, they'll run from 9 to 15 volts. So you have a lot more room for voltage drop. But what I always tell people as a general rule of thumb is you can fit up to 100 watts of lights on 12-2 wire up to a length of approximately 200 feet, and you won't lose enough power or won't lose enough voltage to cause an issue in your system. And why is that? Well, if you look here, if we have 100 watts of lights, which is approximately 15 to 20 lights on a single run of wire, which is quite a bit on a single run, you're going to lose approximately 5.56 volts. So why doesn't that matter? Well, because if you're using a transformer that has multiple taps, so usually they'll have a 12 volt and like a 15 volt tap. If you start at a 15 volt tap, well, all of a sudden, if you lose 5.5 volts along that line, you still have 9.5 volts at that actual fixture. Again, like I said, those LED lights are typically designed to run at 9 to 15 volts. So you shouldn't have an issue if you're doing that. And if you're worried about, like, again, if you have 15 lights and you're kind of worried, well, then just have another run that covers the other half of the lights. And then all of a sudden you can see is if you only have like, say 60 watts, now you can go over 300 feet and you're not even losing close to that. So if you're worried, just put a few less lights on that line. And then all of a sudden that distance, you can run that a lot further out. That's why you don't necessarily have to worry about voltage drop. Guys, it's so rare. I've never, and a lot of the engineers out there is like, well, you can just hook up a multimeter and see what it is at the end of the line. I've never done that unless I've come into an issue because it's so rare. I've had 60 lights on a line that runs, you know, a long ways. And again, I've really never had issue when I'm using LED lights. So it's not something I usually plan ahead or work around too much or plan into because I know if I just use these simple rules, then I'm going to be well within that. And if you're watching this video, you're doing it on your own anyway, you're probably not going to have 60 to 80 lights. So it's not even going to be a concern of yours. So yeah, that's basically voltage drop in a nutshell. So I did want to touch on that. I'm going to leave that. The last thing I kind of wanted to talk about today, and this might be a bit of a shorter live stream, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the fixtures. And let me just, oh, you know what? Let me just go back here. Yeah, I just wanted to, again, just kind of show you a close up when I was talking about the wiring, because I know that other one was pretty far out there. But again, you can see how you have your 12-2 wire. You can see how it goes in. You can see how it goes out. And then you can see how you have your fixture wire that goes into it as well. Like I said, if you were trying to get 4 wires in, the only reason you would do that is because you have 2 fixtures and you would have them in this as well. But there's really no reason to have to do that because you can just go, you know, put another fixture on. And then this is, again, just a close up of that last fixture. Again, you've got your 12-2 going in, and then you have your last fixture wire going in, but there's no other wires that have to go out. So you don't have to worry about, you don't have to worry about detonating them because you only have those two wires going in. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is, again, this is just kind of a close-up of teeing the line. Like I said, you can use these or those larger nano junction connectors fit the 12-2 wire. But again, you've got your 12-2 going in, you've got your 12-2 going out, and then you have your 12-2 that's running to that other fixture. This is how you would go kind of create that tee in the line. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the fixtures a little bit here. Let me just go to a different screen. Okay, so I get questions about, let me just find that. I get questions about these uplights because when I'm doing my consultation videos, you know, I'll usually say, oh, if you have a tree that's over 25 feet tall, then you probably want to use a 5-watt bulb in there. If you have a tree that's over 35, 40 feet, you're probably going to go with a 7-watt. Anything under 20 feet, you probably have a 3-watt. And then I talk about a wash light. A wash light is typically used when you have small shrubs or you're trying to just gently wash a small plant, a sculpture, a feature, small parts of the house. And people say, well, how do you use a wash light? Because a lot of the wash lights I see are these rectangular ones, or they're oval ones, or whatever it is. Well, the reason we just use this fixture is because this is what we call a lamp ready fixture. So what a lamp ready fixture is basically there's 2 types. There's a lamp ready and then there's an integrated fixture. A lamp ready, all that means is that it just takes an MR16 bulb that can easily be replaced. So I like that for a lot of reasons, especially for the do-it-yourselfer, because one reason is it's super easy to replace if you need to. Typically you'll get, 3 to 5 years or longer with one of these bulbs, so you don't need to go replace it very often. The other reason I really, really like it for do-it-yourselfers is because sometimes, well, 2 reasons. One, your landscape is going to grow, so you might have a smaller tree at first that you're just going to have like a 3-watt bulb in there. But as that tree gets bigger over time, you might want to adjust and you might want to put a larger bulb in there. Also, sometimes when you're coming up with your design and you're doing it on your own, you might not exactly know what type of fixture. So if you screw up and you say, oh, you know what, I put the wrong size bulb in there. It's not bright enough for what I need. Well, you can easily go and switch that out. And it basically just kind of looks like this. I'll just open this up for you. But yeah, the top just pops off and then there's just a bulb in there, right? And that bulb just comes out and it goes back in. So it's easily adjustable. So it's very versatile in that way. So the other option of lights is, it's not going to show up, is it? Let me go. Is an integrated fixture is basically, it has a built-in LED board, so it looks like this, where you actually have like a built-in LED board with like a little diode, and that's where you get your light from. So the benefit to this is these typically dissipate heat a little bit better, so they tend to last a little bit longer. Personally, from my experience, that's not always the case. And the problem with that is now, if it burns out, it's not as simple as just, you know, popping a bulb out and replacing it. You got to go replace the LED board, which I'll tell you is harder to find than you think. Good fixtures, good quality ones, will they'll have replacements and you can actually replace them. The downside to that is they're typically quite expensive if you're going to go do that. If it's a really cheap fixture and it has an LED board like this, like you get at Home Depot or something like that, I will almost guarantee you that it's not replaceable. So if that board dies, which on a cheap fixture, it will die within 3 to 5 years, you can't replace it. You have to go replace the whole fixture, which means you got to rewire it and you got to replace the fixture. So it's a pain in the ass and it's not very cost effective. The other thing is when you're going with an LED or an integrated fixture, you really have to, that's why a lot of pros will use this, but if you're on a do-it-yourself basis, you're probably not going to, because now you need to know these are not, most of the time they're not adjustable. So you need to know what brightness and what angle you want while you're making that purchase. Because if you don't, you can't go change it afterwards. You have to change out the whole fixture. That's why we don't deal a lot with this. I'm not saying we haven't used them before, and there's some amazing lights out there that are like this, but you really need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, it can get very costly and can be a huge pain in the ass. That's why I like to use these lamp ready fixtures, is because, again, oh, where are we going? Is because it gives you that on what you're doing. You can go customize that bulb. And then also it's easier to replace and all those kinds of things. But here's what I wanted to talk about now with the wash light. So you can see there's different options here. You can do a 7-watt. Like I said, if you're doing a tree that's probably over 35 feet or so, you probably want to go with a 7-watt bulb. If you're going something that's kind of that 20 to 35 feet, I'm going to say a 5-watt bulb. 5-watt bulbs also really good if you're trying to light a house, you're trying to get light to that second story. Typically a 5-watt bulb is going to do the job. Most of the time you're going to use a 3-watt bulb. Trees under 15 feet, most of the lights around your house to light, you know, the porches, the walls, that kind of stuff, you're probably just going to use a 3-watt. And then the reason I like this light so much is that we can go and make it a wash light by using a 2-watt 110 degree beam spread. So these are all just standard 38 degrees. A lot of times I'll get questions, well, should I put like a 60 degree or a 15 degree or that kind of stuff? There's going to be rare circumstances where you need to change the actual degree that you're going to notice that much of a difference. Like if you have to light a flagpole that's 60 feet up in the air, okay, you might have to narrow that beam a little bit. But that's really the only case that it's going to make that much of a difference. So these are all standard 38 degree. And then now you can have that 2-watt 110 degree. So say, well, how's that a wash light? Well, a wash light, a lot of times you guys have seen those wash lights that are like rectangular or they're oval or whatever it is. That's not necessarily what puts out it will definitely put it out more, because the reason is when you have a fixture like this, and again, this is why I like this one. If you have a fixture like this and you put a 110 degree beam in there, well, what happens? It's just going to hit the edges and then it's still only going to go up so much. The reason this is such a versatile light is now I can just bring that shroud all the way down and all of a sudden I got nothing stopping it. So now when I use that 110 degree spread, I can really cover those areas and I can make it a wash light. The reason I like that is because, like I just said with the lamp ready ones, is if you're new, maybe you're not sure if you need a 2-watt wall wash light or just a standard 3-watt one. Well, if you pick the wrong one and you screw up, it's not a big deal. You can just go replace the bulb very simply, and you can create that wash light effect. So that's why we use this light, same fixture, but you can see we can have up to 4 different effects with this one fixture. And how you make it a wash light. And again, this is why I like this. That's why I like this kind of extendable shroud too, for a couple of reasons. Is one, now I can turn this into a wash light by pulling it back. On a standard one, I'll probably have it, kind of halfway up. But if it's an area that's close to like a walkway or stairs or something, you don't want that light kind of hitting you and glaring in the eye. Well, you can bring this shroud up even more. And then all of a sudden it covers more of that light. So you're going to have less side light, and it's going to cover that area more. Again, that's why a lot of times I won't bother with like a 60-degree spread or anything, because then if you need to kind of sharpen those edges a little bit, it's not going to affect it as much. Whereas if you have a 60-degree bulb in here and you have to extend this all the way, well, you just wasted money on a 60-degree bulb, because you ain't getting 60 degrees when you have this thing fully extended. So that's why this is a good light. And that's why it's really good for the do-it-yourselfers, because you can buy a handful of these, and then you can go and you can kind of see, okay, what looks best. And if you don't like the way it looks, you just change the bulb. Again, that's why, and go back to my earlier point, that's why these battery packs are so handy. It's literally just this little battery pack. It takes 8 AA batteries. You can't run a system off a long time off this when they get really hot. 2, these batteries are not going to last long. Like, in ideal conditions, I've been able to keep a light on for 6 to 8 hours and then the batteries die. But if all you need to go do is test things out, again, you just hook on your alligator clips, and then all of a sudden that light is on. I can go test this out. I can go at night. I can walk around the property, put this on a bunch of different trees, and then see how it looks. So it's a really, really cool tool. You guys should definitely, if you're like a contractor and you're just kind of getting started in landscape lighting, which I know a lot of you watching this are, go buy a handful of lights, a handful of those battery packs, because one thing with lighting is it's kind of a seeing is believing thing. So sometimes you need to see it before you can make that decision. Same thing. I'm just going to use the example of husbands and wives, because this is a very common scenario. I'll have a husband will send in some pictures, get a consult, and say, I like the idea, I really want to do it, but I got to run it by the boss. I don't care if you're feminist or whatever, but the reality is my wife makes most of the decisions, so I got to ask her. Or you just what's the saying, you beg for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. That's one option too. But if you need to go and ask first, well, it really helps to have this, because then you can go show her what it's going to look like, or you can go show him, I don't care. But once they see landscape lighting, and this goes for contractors and stuff too, if you're trying to, impress a client or whatever, once they see it, it's very hard to take it away, because just the benefits of landscape lighting, it just makes things really stand out. So that's why these battery packs, sorry, I've got dozens of these that I use all the time. But if you're starting out, go and get these guys. Cool way to check things out. I think I'm just going to check. I kind of covered all the notes, all the questions that I had. If you guys have more questions, other things you guys want me to cover on future live streams like next Wednesday, please email those in. You can always just go to our contact page. You can message those in, leave comments in this section too. You can do that. We'll happily answer those on the next stream. And again, guys, go and take advantage of our consultation. Basically, again, I didn't cover any on this one because I knew this would be a longer video. You can send us a message and we'll send you all the details how to go do that. Or basically, you just email me a couple pictures, Cal, @lightingdoctor.ca. I'm going to review those. I'm going to get back to you with kind of a full custom design, show you what you need, what kind of lights, so I can kind of help you with this process if you're not comfortable going and testing things out. And then we can even customize a full kit for you if you need, or you can, find the supplies wherever you need. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Please come back for the next. I just had a couple quick questions I was going to answer. It sounded like the sound was cutting out. I apologize again. Like I said, the internet kind of sucks. And most of the lights, we can always customize and get different lights. We just don't put them all on our website because there's like 1,000 different lights literally that you could go and use. The reason you'll find all of this stuff on site is because 99% of the time, this is the lights you're going to use. You're going to often, I'll just kind of show you, sometimes you'll use an in-ground light. An in-ground light is basically an uplight that just goes flush into the grass, so you can just mow over it. It's going to be less maintenance for you. So that's an option. Sometimes you'll use hardscape lights, on fences, retaining walls, and that kind of stuff. Sometimes you'll use deck lights like this that you might want to put on a deck. Sometimes you're going to do some downlighting, some moonlighting. So you might need an actual downlight that just kind of protects the water a little bit more. Other than that, those are the lights you're going to use. If you're looking for like a special type of fixture or something, definitely let us know. We can always go source it out. But rather than you having to look through 1,000 different lights, then we can kind of go help that for you. So Robin, I appreciate the question. And Cecil, I think you just did a consult for us. I appreciate you checking in. Like I said, check in next week. We'll do another live stream. If you have any questions or maybe a design issue that you want us to go over, send that in and we'll go over that for you. So thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next time.